They said it was impossible. They said the old M1 Abrams was finished. Its engine crippled, its systems unresponsive, its steel heart silent after decades of service. Engineers tried everything: diagnostics, rewires, part replacements, but nothing worked. So finally, they gave up. The disabled tank was pushed to the far corner of the yard, left like a forgotten relic baking under the sun. But fate had other plans. Because on that quiet afternoon, the base received a call from someone no one expected. A decorated colonel with silver in his hair and fire in his voice. And with him came a name that made the entire maintenance crew straighten their backs. A legendary tank veteran. A man the new recruits only knew from whispered stories. A man who once fixed an Abrams during a storm using nothing but intuition and memory. No one knew that by the end of the day, that silent tank would roar again and change the fate of everyone who witnessed it. The desert heat was merciless that morning as engineers gathered around the stalled M1 Abrams. Its armor, once proud and battle-ready, now carried the dust of neglect. Sergeant Lewis, the head engineer, wiped sweat from his forehead as he shook his head for the final time. "It's no use," he muttered. "We've replaced the turbine controls, rechecked the fuel delivery system, ran diagnostics twice. Everything should work, but it won't." The team sighed in defeat. Some looked frustrated, some embarrassed, others simply heartbroken. Because this tank wasn't just a machine. It was part of the base's history. It had carried crews across unforgiving terrain, pulled soldiers out of danger, and survived conditions no machine should have endured. Private Torres was the youngest among them, barely 21, and he stared at the tank with a kind of sadness that no one else noticed. "My dad rode in one of these," he whispered. "Feels wrong to give up on it." But orders were orders. And soon, the massive Abrams was chained to a tow vehicle and dragged to the side of the yard. The place where abandoned equipment went before being stripped for parts. Just as the engineers were about to clock out for the day, the base siren beeped twice. A signal that someone important had arrived. Colonel Ramirez stepped out of his vehicle with the aura of a man born for leadership. He surveyed the yard, eyes sharp, posture straight. "Which one of you declared that Abrams dead?" he asked firmly. Sergeant Lewis stepped forward nervously. "Sir, we tried everything. It won't start." The colonel nodded once, as if he expected that answer. Then he said the sentence no one anticipated. "Call him." The engineers exchanged confused looks. "Him who?" Torres finally asked. Ramirez took a slow breath. "Master Chief Daniel Ironhand Warren. The most legendary tank veteran this base has ever known." Torres' eyes widened. Everyone had heard the stories. How Ironhand once drove a burning tank out of enemy fire. How he could hear a problem in an engine the way musicians hear a wrong note. "Sir, he retired 10 years ago. And he's still the best chance we have?" the colonel said. An hour later, a dusty old pickup truck rolled through the gates. Behind the wheel was an older man with calm eyes, deep lines on his face, and hands that looked like they'd been shaped by steel themselves. Master Chief Warren stepped out, slowly, quietly, but with the presence of someone who had lived through more than most could imagine. He didn't greet anyone. He didn't ask questions. He simply walked straight to the broken Abrams and placed his hand on its armor, like greeting an old friend. Warren circled the tank once, then twice, his fingers brushing across every bolt, every panel. The engineers watched in absolute silence, as if afraid of interrupting some kind of ritual. Finally, Warren spoke, his voice gravelly and calm. "You've all been looking in the wrong place." Sergeant Lewis blinked. "Sir, with respect, we..." Warren raised a hand. "This tank isn't just dead, it's heartbroken." The engineers exchanged awkward glances. Heartbroken, was he joking? But the colonel nodded knowingly. Warren continued. "These machines, they remember everything. And if you treat them like scrap before they're ready to quit, they shut down. This one still has life." He climbed onto the tank with a surprising steadiness for his age. He opened a panel the engineers had ignored, reached deep inside, and pulled out a cable with a burned tip. "This," he said simply, "is why she won't start." Torres stepped closer. "But sir, we checked all the wiring." "You checked the obvious wiring," Warren corrected. "This one is hidden. Abrams taught me that 40 years ago." With the precision of a surgeon, he cleaned the burned tip, rewired the connector, tightened a bolt, and tapped the panel twice. "Now," he said, "let's wake her up." The engineers gathered around as Warren climbed into the driver's seat. The colonel watched with quiet anticipation. Warren inserted the key, paused, whispered something under his breath, and turned it. For 3 long seconds, nothing happened. Then, a low rumble began. A vibration traveled through the steel. Dust shook off the tracks. The massive turbine coughed once, twice. The entire base turned to look. Engineers cheered. Torres nearly cried. Even Sergeant Lewis cracked a smile. Warren stepped out of the tank, brushing dust off his shirt. "Told you," he said quietly. "She wasn't done yet." Colonel Ramirez approached, offering a firm handshake. "You've given this base more than a working tank," the colonel said. "You've given us hope." Warren looked at Torres, the youngest of them all. "Son," he said, "machines break, people break, but we don't throw them away. We fix them. That's what soldiers do." Torres nodded, feeling those words settle into his heart like a seed planted in fertile ground. By the time the sun set, the Abrams was back on its feet, alive, humming, powerful. The engineers walked away with a new lesson: broken doesn't mean finished. Not for tanks. Not for people. Not for dreams. Because sometimes all it takes is someone who refuses to give up. Someone who remembers the value hidden beneath the dust. And that day, a legendary veteran reminded them all. Strength isn't in the steel, it's in the spirit.